Book summary, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Have you ever wondered why sometimes your decisions seem to be made in an instant, while at other times you ponder for hours? This is a question that has puzzled philosophers, psychologists, and even ordinary people for centuries. It's a question that gets to the heart of human nature and how we perceive the world around us. How does our brain, an organ that weighs just about 3 pounds, manage to carry out the complex task of decision-making? To answer this question, we need to delve into the depths of our neural networks and explore the underlying processes that govern our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately, our decisions. One prominent figure who has dedicated his life's work to understanding these mechanisms is the renowned psychologist and Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman. In his groundbreaking book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman provides an insightful overview of the inner workings of our minds. He describes two distinct systems that our brains utilize when making decisions. These are, as he terms them, System 1 and System 2. Let's delve a bit deeper into the characteristics of these two systems to understand how they govern our decision-making process. To begin with, we have System 1. Picture this. System 1 is like that friend who always seems to have a quick response at the tip of their tongue. This friend is spontaneous, always ready to jump into action, making decisions on the without needing time to deliberate or contemplate. Similarly, System 1 operates automatically and swiftly, with little conscious effort and no sense of voluntary control. It's like the part of you that instantly knows that 2 + 2 = 4, without needing to engage in any mathematical computation. It's the part of your mind that lets you ride a bike without having to consciously remind yourself how to balance, pedal, and steer at the same time. It's System 1 that enables you to recognize the face of a loved one in a crowded room without having to scrutinize every individual face. System 1, in essence, is the part of our minds that thrives on instinct, intuition, and immediate recognition. Contrarily, System is akin to the thoughtful friend who takes their time, considers all available options, and then makes a decision. This part of our mind is responsible for carrying out more complex mental tasks that demand a greater level of cognitive effort. It's the part of your brain that kicks in when you're trying to solve a complex math problem, planning a detailed itinerary for an upcoming trip, or making a significant life decision like choosing a career path or a life partner. System 2 is slower, more deliberate, and requires a substantial amount of energy to function effectively. Its decisions are often based on logic, reason, and careful consideration of the available data. Now here's an intriguing aspect. While System 2 may seem like the more rational and reliable part of our mind, it isn't always in control. In fact, more often than not, it's System 1, the fast, intuitive system that silently guides our decisions and actions, and it does so without us even realizing it. For instance, have you ever found yourself reaching for a candy bar at the checkout counter, even though you had resolved to stick to a healthy diet? That's System 1 subtly influencing your decision, overriding the rational inputs of System 2. So, why is it important for us to understand these two systems? Because comprehending these two systems can give us deep insights into the nature of our decision-making processes. It can explain why we sometimes make decisions based on a whim, while at other times we ponder endlessly before reaching a conclusion. Understanding these two systems can help us make sense of our habits, reactions, and our choices. It can help us become more conscious, thoughtful, and effective decision-makers. It can help us recognize when we're being swayed by our instincts and when we're being guided by our analytical thinking. So remember, next time you make a decision, pause for a moment and think, is this System 1 or System 2 at work? Understanding these two systems can help us comprehend why we make the decisions we do in our daily lives. Have you ever jumped to a conclusion without having all the facts? If so, you were likely using what psychologists call heuristics. These are cognitive shortcuts that our brains employ to facilitate rapid decision-making. It's akin to boarding the express train of cognition, bypassing the slower local train that halts at each station of information, dissecting every detail before moving on. It's the more efficient route our minds instinctively gravitate towards when time is of the essence or when the information available is overwhelming. In his acclaimed book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman takes us on an enlightening journey into the world of heuristics and biases. He introduces us to their pervasive influence in our daily lives. These shortcuts, though often advantageous, can, under certain circumstances, lead us into making ill-informed or irrational decisions. They are the unseen forces that subtly shape our perception and interpretation of reality. Kahneman differentiates between two systems of thinking. System 1 thinking, which is fast, instinctive, and emotional, heavily relies on heuristics to make snap judgments. It is this system that catapults us into action when we encounter familiar situations, or when an immediate reaction is needed. A prime example of a heuristic employed by System 1 is the availability heuristic. The availability heuristic is the cognitive process where our brain makes a decision based on the immediate examples that come readily to mind. Suppose you've just read a news article about a horrific plane crash. The disturbing imagery and details of the incident are still fresh in your mind. Consequently, you might overestimate the risk associated with flying. This heuristic, while sometimes useful, can also lead us to make exaggerated risk assessments, causing unnecessary fear and anxiety. But the operation of heuristics does not occur in a vacuum. These cognitive shortcuts intertwine with various biases, coloring our decision-making processes with personal preconceptions and prejudices. A significant bias that often accompanies heuristics is the confirmation bias. This bias demonstrates our inherent tendency to seek out, interpret, and favor information that aligns with our pre-existing beliefs or values. It's as if we're wearing blinkers, restricting our vision to only what to see, what we are comfortable with, and what validates our worldview. Another noteworthy bias is the anchoring bias. It manifests when we give undue weightage to the initial piece of information we encounter, known as the anchor, while making decisions. For instance, if a store advertises a shirt as reduced from $100 to $50, we're more likely to perceive it as a great deal, even if the initial price tag was excessively inflated. We fall prey to the anchoring bias, letting the first bit of information unduly influence our evaluation of the product's worth. These mental shortcuts and inherent biases, while serving as efficient tools for quick decision-making, can sometimes lead us down the path of irrational choices or distorted interpretations of reality. However, the first step towards mitigating their influence is awareness. Recognizing these biases in our thinking can equip us to take a moment, reassess our assumptions, and strive to make more rational and informed decisions. Therefore, the next time you catch yourself jumping to conclusions, take a moment to pause. Investigate your thought process. Are you inadvertently succumbing to the allure of heuristics and biases? There is much to gain from being cognizant of how these invisible forces shape our thoughts, actions, and perceptions. So let's endeavor to be more self-aware and mindful of our thinking and decision-making processes. Do you ever feel certain about something only to find out later you were wrong? Welcome to the mesmerizing realm of overconfidence, an intriguing behavioral trait that's inherently interwoven into our cognitive thought processes. This peculiar characteristic of our thought system has been explored and explained by various scholars, but none more so than Daniel Kahneman, a renowned psychologist and Nobel laureate. In his highly acclaimed book, Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman offers an enthralling explanation for why we, as human beings, tend to be incredibly sure of ourselves, even when our assumptions are far from accurate. In his view, propensity towards overconfidence is not a flaw, but a natural byproduct of how our minds function. Kahneman introduces us to two cognitive systems that govern our thought processes, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is quick, intuitive, and often leaps to conclusions without asking for permission. It operates on the principle of speed and efficiency. This system is what makes us react without thinking, whether it's swerving to avoid an obstacle on the road or jumping at a sudden loud. On the contrary, System 2 is slow, deliberate, and likes to contemplate the pros and cons before making a decision. It's the part of our mind that comes into play when we're grappling with complex problems, making major life decisions, or solving a difficult math equation. Overconfidence, as Kahneman enlightens us, is a product of System 1's impulsive nature. It arises from our mind's innate desire to create a coherent narrative when confronted with ambiguous or incomplete information. But how does this work in practice? Imagine a scenario where you're asked to guess the population of a city you've never even heard of before. Your System 1 immediately kicks into action, making a quick estimate based on whatever sparse information you possess. You feel surprisingly confident about your guess, despite knowing it's not substantiated by any concrete data. This textbook case of overconfidence. But why does our mind exhibit such behavior? The answer lies in our brain's love for simplicity. Our mind is a pattern-seeking machine, continuously striving to make sense of the world around us, even when it doesn't possess all the pieces of the puzzle. It fills in the gaps, constructs a narrative, and convinces us of its accuracy. However, this tendency towards overconfidence can often lead us down the wrong path. It can cause us to overlook other plausible explanations, ignore glaring warning signs, and grossly underestimate potential risks. It paints a picture of certainty where there's ambiguity, and in doing so, it's akin to walking on a tightrope blindfolded, firmly believing we won't fall. Despite these drawbacks, Kahneman suggests that by acknowledging this inherent cognitive bias, we're already towards mitigating its effects. We can actively engage our system to question our assumptions, consider different viewpoints, and maintain an open mind. By understanding our predisposition towards overconfidence, we can strive to keep our minds open and continuously question our assumptions. In essence, it's about learning to balance our instinctive confidence with a healthy dose of skepticism. It's about understanding when to trust our gut and when to question it. In doing so, we can make more informed decisions and navigate our world with enhanced wisdom and a touch more prudence. By understanding our inclination towards overconfidence, we can strive to keep an open mind and question our assumptions. It's about learning to balance our instinctive confidence with a healthy dose of skepticism. In doing so, we can make better decisions and navigate our world with a touch more wisdom. Have you ever noticed that the fear of losing something often outweighs the joy of gaining something of equal value? This thought-provoking question introduces us to an intriguing concept in Daniel Kahneman's critically acclaimed book, Thinking, Fast and Slow, a concept known as the prospect theory and the principle of loss aversion. Now let's delve into an imaginary situation. Picture two different scenarios. Scenario 1, you stumble upon $50 on a lonely street. Scenario 2, you misplace $50 from your wallet. Both scenarios involve the same amount of money, but which one resonates more deeply with you on an emotional level? Most people instinctively answer the second scenario. But why is that? This is where the concept of loss aversion comes into play. A term coined by Kahneman, loss aversion refers to the phenomenon where losses create a more significant impact than equivalent gains. This might seem counterintuitive at first, but it is a well-documented facet of human psychology. Our minds, for some reason, are wired such a way that we feel the pain of a loss more acutely than the joy of a gain. It is this very psychological bias that often influences our decisions. We usually don't base our choices on the potential for profit, but rather on the fear of what we stand to lose. This fear of loss is a powerful motivator and is responsible for various behaviors we exhibit, like buying insurance and hesitating to take risks even when the potential reward is significant. The prospect theory, a groundbreaking piece of research developed by Kahneman and his esteemed colleague Amos Tversky, expounds on this concept in more detail. It suggests that people make decisions based not on the absolute of outcomes, but on the potential value of losses and gains. This implies that we don't always choose options that seem the most beneficial in the long run. Instead, we tend to opt for choices that present the least risk of loss in the immediate future. Now, this isn't necessarily an unfavorable trait. It is a survival mechanism, a product of our evolution that has been designed to protect us from harm. This mechanism has allowed our species survive and thrive in an uncertain world. However, being acutely aware of this instinctual bias, understanding its influence on our cognitive processes, can enable us to make more informed decisions. Acknowledging our natural predispositions can help us analyze risks and rewards more accurately. It can embolden us to embrace positive risks when the potential benefits outweigh the potential losses, acting in our best interest. So, the next time you're faced with a decision, pause and introspect. Decision primarily driven by the fear of what I could lose or by the potential of what I could gain. Reflecting on this question might yield surprising insights. Remember, just by being conscious of our inherent aversion to, we can strive to make more balanced choices. Being aware of our instinctive aversion to loss can help us make more balanced choices. Have you ever looked back on an experience and felt differently about it than you did while you were living it? This question leads us to consider the concept of dual selves. First, the experiencing self, the version of you that lives in the present. This you savors every moment, the taste of morning coffee, the feeling of a cool breeze on your face. It absorbs the world as it occurs, instant by instant. However, there's another you, the remembering self. This self relives past experiences and memories. This you might recall the cool breeze differently or the coffee as more fragrant. The remembering self often misaligns with the experiencing self, sometimes romanticizing, dramatizing, or even trivializing incidents to match a narrative. Consider an example. You head to the beach on a sunny day. Your experiencing self feels the heat, the sand, the salty aroma. But afterward, your remembering self might remember it as the ideal day, overlooking the sunburn or the bothersome sand. Why does this occur? Our memory, a flawless recorder, more like an artist, generating a version of events that aligns with our perception. This isn't detrimental. It's just how our brains function. It's crucial to acknowledge this difference because it can influence our choices. We often base decisions on our remembering self, not our experiencing self. We pursue what we believe will provide us with retrospective happiness, not what will bring us joy in moment. This insight gives us a fresh perspective. It motivates us to value the present, to live for the experiencing self, while appreciating the remembering self. Understanding the difference between our experiencing and remembering selves can help us better appreciate our lives as we live them. So let's savor the moment and remember with kindness. After we are, in essence, two selves living one life. So what can we take away from Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman? Kahneman acquaints us with the two key systems that drive our thought processes. System 1 is automatic, swift, with less voluntary control, representing our intuition. Conversely, System 2 is slower, more logical, and tied to mental exertion, usually linked with complex computations and decision-making. Kahneman also explores heuristics and biases, our mental shortcuts to simplify vast, complex environments, yet can lead to systematic errors or biases. An example is the availability heuristic, where if something is easily recalled, we assume it's significant, causing skewed perceptions of reality. Also, the anchoring bias makes us over-rely on initial information when making decisions. Overconfidence, another concept introduced by Kahneman, is the tendency to overrate our abilities and belief accuracy. He suggests that overconfidence can result in inaccurate decisions and misguided actions. It is crucial to stay humble and open to being wrong to avoid overconfidence's pitfalls. Another captivating concept is the prospect theory. It challenges the traditional economic theory by stating that we feel losses more intensely than gains, influencing decision-making. For instance, the fear of losing $100 might surpass the joy of gaining the same amount. Kahneman also defines the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives in the present and feels emotions as they occur. The remembering self, though, keeps track and narrates our lives continuously. This differentiation is vital because our decisions are often based on memories of our experiences, not the experiences themselves. There you have it, the key points from Thinking Fast and Slow. These concepts teach us that our minds are intricate and often irrational, prone to biases and overconfidence. Our decisions are influenced by loss potential and memories rather than direct experiences. While this might seem overwhelming, it's empowering. Once we understand these concepts, we can make more rational decisions. We can challenge our biases, question our overconfidence, weigh our choices more carefully, and live more in the present. By understanding these concepts, we can better understand our own minds, make more rational decisions, and live more fulfilling lives. Key points from the book. 1. Two systems of thought. The book proposes two distinct systems governing our thinking. System 1, fast, intuitive, and emotional, and System 2, slow, deliberate, and logical. 2. Heuristics and biases. System 1 relies on mental shortcuts, heuristics, that can lead to biases in our judgments and decisions. These biases include anchoring, availability, confirmation, and framing effects. 3. Choice architecture. The way choices are presented can significantly influence our decisions. Understanding how framing and nudges impact choices can help us make better ones. 4. Overconfidence and illusion of control. We tend to overestimate our knowledge and control over situations, leading to poor decision-making and neglecting risk. 5. Priming and scarcity. Our thoughts and actions can be subtly influenced by what we've recently encountered, priming, and the perceived scarcity of resources. 6. Happiness and well-being. The book explores the psychological factors contributing to happiness and well-being, emphasizing the importance of focusing on experiences over material possessions. 7. Rationality and irrationality. While humans strive for rationality, our inherent biases and System 1's influence can lead to irrational behavior. Recognizing these limitations can help us make more conscious choices. Thank you for watching and sharing. By Book Summary by PM.